we really pushed the inclusion levels in our diet. That was one of the practical questions that we were asking in our research was how hard can you push the inclusion levels in the diet? With broilers, we went all the way to 48%, and that was even with a variety that sort of had moderate tannin content. So, and it's a fairly common variety. With layers, we went to 36%. And once you get above that level, it stops becoming really practical because you start seeing the crude protein level in the diet sort of really creeps up. But and depending on the variety, we didn't really see any adverse effects of pushing the inclusion levels that high.
So hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Poultry Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast, where we discuss the latest in the poultry nutrition industry and research trends in approximately 10 minutes or less. My name is Sam Rochel. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show and associate professor of poultry nutrition here at Auburn University, and joined today by a colleague from the north, coming to us from University of Alberta, Matt Oryschak, who's a PhD in the final stages of his PhD program there, working on ingredient evaluation in poultry. So, hey, Matt, good to see you, and look forward to talking with you today.
Looking forward to it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you bet. So, as I mentioned, you've been working on ingredient evaluation, particularly around fava beans. So, can you just kind of give us a brief introduction into this ingredient and kind of the motivation for the research?
Sure. Yeah. So faba beans are a pulse crop that are grown fairly extensively, in different parts of the world. In Western Canada, we grow a lot of pulse crops, lentils, peas, chickpeas, mostly for export. But faba beans is kind of an interesting one because it has some very unique agronomic properties that actually make it a very attractive crop. But the problem is we don't consume a lot of beans domestically, like for human consumption. And there aren't a lot of export markets that, where we can send them. So a lot of our beans right now are actually being, as I understand it, exported to the U.S. and they're being used in feed. At the same time, we have poultry producers who are looking for any way they can to leverage some of the things that we grow in Western Canada to help manage their feed costs. And so sort of the impetus for this research is faba beans have a lot of really great attributes that lend themselves really well to poultry nutrition applications. And then you also have poultry producers that are looking for, some alternative feedstuffs. So the idea here was to sort of bring those two together in a way that, there was a win for both sides of it. There was increased demand for pulse growers for faba beans. And then also poultry producers are, they have another tool in their toolbox, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That makes for a great story and seemed like a good benefit for agricultural system overall. Just a kind of a high level overview, faba beans, general protein, energy content, those types of things. I know this is kind of probably the area you're working in, but what's the general composition?
Right. So faba beans have the highest protein content, generally speaking, of any of the pulses that we grow in Western Canada. So somewhere in the 26 to 30% range for protein, about 30 to 35% starch, has a pretty decent amino acid profile. Mm-hmm. Part of the information that we were looking to actually cultivate from our research or develop in our research was actually to help characterize what the variability in composition is. And so that was part of the work that we did. But yeah, so high 20% in terms of protein.
Okay.
In terms of energy, we didn't really have a good number going into into our research that we could use, but based on our digestibility trial, looks like about 2.65 megacals, which would put it in the same ballpark as field pea, barley, some other feeds like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So through your work and doing this characterization, so maybe you've done some feeding and performance trials too. What have been some of the most interesting findings from this work?
Okay, well, in terms of some of the interesting findings, as I mentioned, we found actually that the composition, like the total nutrient composition, was fairly consistent actually. And we had samples we collected that had been grown in 2022 across Western Canada. And, there was, there's obviously, you're going to find some outliers, but the variability was actually, was pretty tight. In terms of some of the interesting things, one of the knocks, I guess, traditionally against fava beans has been that they do contain tannins, condensed tannins, and that's when nutritionists hear condensed tannins, they tend to sort of clutch their pearls a little bit when it comes to protein digestibility, but one of the interesting findings is we asked the question to the chickens multiple different ways, and it doesn't appear that fava bean tannins pose any sort of significant risk to poultry performance. That was one of our interesting findings.
Okay. Yeah.
Another one was that from our digestibility trial, we actually the standardized ileal coefficients that we got for most of the essential amino acids very, very close to the same coefficients that you would see in soybean meal. So that was kind of an interesting finding as well.
Very nice. Going back to the tannin aspect, obviously level is probably important there. What kind of inclusion levels are typical diets, maybe either on layers or broilers or whichever type of poultry you're working with?
So we really pushed the inclusion levels in our diet. That was one of the practical questions that we were asking in our research was how hard can you push the inclusion levels in the diet? With broilers, we went all the way to 48%, and that was even with a variety that sort of had moderate tannin content. So, and it's a fairly common variety. With layers, we went to 36%. And once you get above that level, it stops becoming really practical because you start seeing the crude protein level in the diet sort of really creeps up. But and depending on the variety, we didn't really see any adverse effects of pushing the inclusion levels that high.
Yeah, very good. So basically what you're saying is, inclusion level as far as any concern on tannins is probably above what's going to be a practical inclusion level in a least cost formulation.
I would say that would be a fair way to characterize it. Yeah.
Very cool. Any other surprises? You mentioned the good, the good consistency. The better than you expected. I guess I'll follow up that with one kind of question: what type of processing, if any? How are the beans typically handled from the time they're harvested until they go into the mixer?
Well, in terms of what we did, literally, we got a tote bag that came right off the field. It had obviously been cleaned a little bit to get rid of the stuff, but we just put it straight through a roller mill and it went straight into the diet. So no heat processing, nothing fancy. It was literally just putting it through a roller mill and it was into the feed.
At Barnes, we're more than just another feed additive company. We are driven by science, innovation, and an understanding of the challenges you face in the ever-changing world of animal agriculture. We are your trusted partner for new-to-market natural alternative to choline chloride, Choline Plus FC, as well as enzymes, prebiotics, probiotics, macro minerals. To learn more about our product offering, visit barnes-ne.com/animal nutrition. Together, there's always a better solution.
So you've kind of characterized the composition. You've looked at feeding these levels, upward 40, 45%. And, so now you've kind of confirmed or validated the inclusion, the composition. We know how to formulate a little bit. Where do you see the next steps going for your work on this?
So one of the interesting aspects of our experiment, or our project, I should say, as a whole, is we had several stakeholders, obviously, from the poultry side of things. We had our local egg and chicken commodity groups, as well as our national egg group as well, commodity group involved. But we also had Western Canadian pulse grower stakeholders as well. And the interesting thing about the project that I was very happy to see is that there's now crosstalk that's starting to happen between these sectors, because they've realized that they can actually be solutions for each other to problems that each industry is dealing with. And so one of the things that is being discussed in very preliminary stages right now is the possibility of scaling up the type of research we did here and looking at some on-farm trials. So, which would probably be the next logical step to seeing this really get out into the mainstream, I would say.
Awesome. Well, hey, this is really exciting work. It's fun to be able to see from, that initial evaluation to the validation. And now hopefully you will get to see that materialize into the field, and particularly when you have different stakeholders in animal ag, both on the crop side and the poultry producers. So that's a really awesome project. So thanks for your work on this, Matt.
Great. Thank you. Happy to talk about it.
All right. Well, thanks to all of you for listening to this episode of the Poultry Nutrition Blackbelt Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to catch the following episodes, please like or subscribe on your favorite platform. And until then, I will catch you on the next one. Thank you.